This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the podcast brought to you by Agriland and AXA, keeping you up to date with all the latest in Irish agriculture. I'm Charles O'Donnell and I'm joined by Agriland journalist Aisling O'Brien. We'll jump straight in and talk about the big news of the week and arguably the biggest agricultural news of the year so far, which is the announcement by the European Commission of long-awaited proposals on the future of the next Common Agricultural Policy. These announcements will kick off around 2 years of debate and negotiations to finalise the next CAP. But the proposals this week are an important signal of the EU intentions and direction of travel on farm grants. Agriland has been covering these proposals since their announcement on Wednesday, and there is so much information here that we can't delve into all of it here on the podcast. But Aisling, can you take us through the main details?
Yeah, so on Wednesday, we finally got the details of the long-awaited proposals from the European Commission about the next long-term budget for the EU, Charles, which is known as the Multi-Annual Financial Framework, or MFF. You're going to be hearing that acronym quite a lot, as you said, over the coming months and years. And this is essentially the budget from 2028 to 2035. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen described it as the most ambitious ever proposed. So as part of an overall increased EU budget proposed to stand at some €2 trillion, the Commission is planning to allocate €300 billion for farmers, which is actually down from the €387 billion in the current cap, which of course has sparked immediate outrage from farm leaders and MEPs and politicians across the board. But we'll come back to that in just a little while. Now, EU Commissioner for Agriculture, Christoph Hansen, addressed members of the European Parliament's Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development on the CAP proposals on Wednesday. There had been significant delays, essentially, Charles, with the announcement from the European Commission Budget Commissioner on the overall proposals. But when Christoph Hansen, I suppose, came before the committee, he outlined the detail of what the Commission is looking to do with the CAP beyond 2027. So he said that the traditional two-pillar structure would be replaced with one policy and one set of measures, which would result in what he said would be no more limitations in transfers between the pillars and no more overlaps to different financing conditions. And he said that the CAP would continue to provide area-based payments, coupled income support, investments, supports to small and young farmers, and incentives for agri-environmental measures. And he told the MEPs at the committee that the proposal, in his view, is a good outcome for agriculture and for our farmers. Now, he said the ring-fenced amount of €300 billion is a minimum number, and that member states would be able to invest their bigger envelope based on their needs and planning in different policy areas, which would be covered by these new national and regional plans. So the Commission has said these new national and regional partnership plans would support the CAP and preserve the role of farmers and rural areas at the heart of the next EU budget, is the line that they're telling us anyway. And under the plans, member states would be able to propose relevant key investments and reforms and other tailor interventions funded by the EU. And those plans have a total fund of €865 billion. And the Commissioner said that those plans would give member states ample opportunities to top up the minimum ring-fenced amount based on their needs. And here is some of what the Commissioner had to say to MEPs at that European Parliament Committee on Agriculture on Wednesday.
Amounts accumulated with degressivity and capping can be re-injected back to the farmers and sectors if member states want to prioritize them. And farmers who might lose due to capping or degressivity have an opportunity to compensate this through incentives. And as I promised, we are allowing member states to better target those farmers who actively contribute as well to food security, and to enable effective generational renewal. We also propose phasing out of income support for farmers who receive national pensions with a sufficient transitional period, of course.
So, Charles, as you heard the Commissioner there outlining, I suppose, the headline arguments for dismantling the two-pillar traditional structure of CAP into this single fund. And he also outlined a range of proposals for the next CAP. And he said that the next CAP has to address the barriers that deter young people from entering the farming sector. All member states are going to be required to put in place a generational renewal strategy and also a so-called starter pack for young farmers. He said that the minimum amount of direct payments for young farmers is proposed to increase from 3 to 6%. And he said to enable effective generational renewal, the Commission is also proposing phasing out CAP income supports for farmers who receive national pensions. And he said with a sufficient transitional period. And in the documents, Charles, this is obviously going to be quite a controversial proposal for thousands of farmers here in Ireland and right across the EU who are in receipt of farm payments along with their pensions. They're saying that member states must ensure that this is in place at the latest 2032. So a big proposal there. And it'll be very interesting to see over the course of the negotiations, will this remain in place? Some of the other proposals that Commissioner Hansen outlined was a smaller farm scheme, which would be a new consolidated payment of up to €3,000 for small farmers. He also said that farmers would be financially incentivised to do more for the environment, climate, biodiversity and animal welfare. And he said the current good agricultural and environmental conditions, the GAIACs that we know so well here on the podcast, would be replaced under the next CAP by these proposals. And they'd be replaced by these protective practices, which would be designed by member states based on their specific needs. The Commission is also proposing a new lump sum payment of up to €200,000 to de-risk a farm's transition to more sustainability. Not very much more detail on that, but an interesting proposal all the same. And the Commissioner said that they're also now going to recognise the importance of mental health and work-life balance for farmers. And the proposals include introducing support for farm relief services during sickness, childbirth or holidays. And the Commissioner also noted that the overall EU budget would include a new method to respond to inflation. So, look, Charles, the Commissioner faced intense criticism from MEPs on the committee right across the political spectrum and from across all of the member states. And other MEPs noted that this reduction comes as the proposed EU budget, as I said earlier, actually increases to that staggering amount of €2 trillion. So here is some of what Irish MEPs on the European Parliament Committee for Agriculture and Rural Development told the Commissioner. And here you're going to hear from Luke Ming-Flanagan, Kieran Malooly and Barry Cowan.
Yeah, I think maybe we should start calling it the UAP, the uncommon agricultural policy, because it's not going to be too common after this. We're looking at a reduction in money while the EU budget has increased, but never mind, the less money is going to be linked to inflation. And even if we stayed at the current amount, in Ireland, you'd be getting 40% of what you're getting in 1991. It's astonishing, really.
Commissioner, I'm disappointed. I'm very disappointed. You set out, I know what you set out to do, but you come into us today and confirm that you've let our budget slip. Our budget is gone, 20% is gone, 20% down. And at the same time, we learned that 131 billion is going into defence and space. Five-fold increase from what was available. Five-fold increase. We are relegated. You have relegated our industry.
Can you confirm that overall budget, the MFF, is dependent on increased payments by Member States and the raising of own resources by the EU? And that being the case, I would contend that such approval for such an extensive and expansive budget, I expect it should and has to be conditional on a pro-rata increase in relation to agriculture. And I think that's our message to our respective individual governments. That's our message to the wider European Parliament for us to win support along that basis, that we have committed to defence and security, for example, but we can't have that without food security.
So in response to all of that criticism, Charles, Commissioner Hansen said it was not correct to say the Commission was cutting money directly coming to farmers. He said that the €300 billion represents the 80% of funds that are ring-fenced. And he said what is actually coming to the farm, that money is being maintained when you really look into the detail of the figures. But I'm not sure how many of the MEPs, Charles, were convinced by that argument. Outside of the committee, we had reaction from other Irish MEPs, including Fine Gael Midlands Northwest MEP Maria Walsh. She said the new approach by the Commission could reduce ring-fenced funding, change the income payment system and ultimately harm our farmers and the development of rural Ireland. And Sinn Féin MEP for Ireland South, Kathleen Funchion, believed that the proposal to merge the CAP with other EU structural funds poses a huge threat to the livelihoods of many farmers across Europe and Ireland.
And moving back domestically, Aisling, to the reaction here at home from the farm organisations, how have they taken this news?
Yes, Charles. So European farm organisations demonstrated in Brussels on Wednesday to coincide with the announcement of the Commission's proposals. The IFA was part of that protest, and IFA President Francie Gorman said the scale of the proposed cut to the CAP budget would have significant and negative ramifications for Irish agriculture and for the rural economy. And he said the only definitive figure for farming supports is 20% lower than the current budget. And he said this would be a hammer blow for the sector if it was to go ahead. Now, the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association President Dennis Drennan said that the Commission's CAP plans represented a speeded up timeline for the EU's withdrawal of direct supports to farming and primary food production. And the ICMSA president also believes that the Commission's plans have the potential to drive up food prices across the EU and drive down the high standard and sustainable food production within the European Union as well. And here at home, in terms of political reaction as well, Charles, Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Martin Hayden, held the first meeting of the CAP Consultation Committee on Thursday. Now, that committee includes government departments, state bodies, universities, farm organisations and environmental groups as well. And the Minister pledged that the government will negotiate through the European Commission's new proposals line by line. And he said that Ireland has been through considerable reforms before and we've managed to negotiate through them in the past. And he said we'll do the same again. And he also pointed, of course, to Ireland having a significant role in all of this because, of course, we will be taking over the presidency of the European Union in the second half of next year as well. And the minister said that the proposals, they will require careful analysis and it seems like a very big change. But he said, in fact, this announcement marks the starting point in a very long negotiating process. As you said, of course, all of these proposals will require the support of the European Parliament and also from member states as well before they get over the line. Now, Sinn Féin spokesperson on agriculture, Deputy Martin Kenny, said the proposal from the Commission to cut area-based payments to farmers who are in receipt of a pension is outrageous and has to be opposed completely. And the Fianna Fáil spokesperson on agriculture, Peter Chapp-Clear, said the proposed changes to CAP were the equivalent of throwing our farmers under the bus. And he said Europe had turned its back on farmers with these misguided proposals. And he said it was something that Fianna Fáil would campaign against, essentially. So putting some pressure there on the Fianna Fáil MEPs. And look, I suppose farmers here on the ground as well, very, very angry, Charles, from what we're hearing feedback initially to these proposals. Of course, the devil will be in the detail when we get more briefings and technical documents around these proposals. And again, I suppose we should stress they are only proposals at this stage.
Well, just before we move on, and with all the news on CAP this week, it might be easy to forget that there was another major development this month, and that was on the nitrates derogation. You'll recall that Ireland was informed by the European Commission that compliance with the EU's Habitat Directive will be necessary to grant a derogation going forward. Well, we've seen some additional developments on that in the last 7 days or so. A delegation from the Irish Cooperative Organisation Society travelled to Brussels this week to meet with senior officials from the European Commission. ICOS President Edward Carr said after the meeting that the delegation expressed its very significant concerns surrounding the proportionality and complexity of introducing new criteria on habitats as part of the derogation. Meanwhile, both the IFA and the ICMSA have called on Minister Hayden to outline exactly what his plans are to retain the derogation with the IFA also asking for a copy of the letter from the Commission confirming this new hurdle to the derogation. And just before we move on from issues concerning the dairy sector, the Global Dairy Trade Index saw a welcome increase this week after 4 decreases in a row. The index went up by 1.1% this week. But moving on now, and as part of an ongoing issue over credit in livestock marts, it appears that mart businesses are coming under pressure to cut the option of credit availability. Aisling, can you tell us more?
Yes, Charles. So currently most marts across the country have a policy whereby cattle that are bought must be paid for on the day of the sale. But in some marts, cattle are purchased and then are paid for at a later date. So as we're well aware of here on the pod, the price of cattle has significantly jumped in recent times. And this week, Mart managers told Agriland that the Property Services Regulatory Authority, the PSRA, is strongly appealing to livestock marts to review the option of credit availability to cattle buyers. Now, the PSRA is the statutory body with responsibility for licensing and regulating the property services sector, which includes auctioneers. Now, we previously reported how the PSRA had a meeting back in May in relation to financial aspects of mart management, and they had requested personnel from all livestock marts in the country to attend. And we understand that meeting came on the back of audits from some marts which showed concerns to the authority about finances. So we reported this week that mart managers are concerned that where some marts are in a position to offer this credit and others are not, the outlets offering credit could be at a competitive advantage as a customer destination for some buyers of cattle. And in some cases, mart managers have proposed that where cattle are bought and not paid for, these cattle should essentially be locked in to the buyer's herds. And if these cattle are subsequently sold, then the funds from the sale of these cattle would go to the mart, which is owed money. So while the majority of livestock buyers at marts, as I said earlier, pay for their cattle using their own capital or a stocking loan, there are cases where cattle are purchased on mart credit, and these buyers are essentially working off mart credit, and they have debts at some of the livestock marts which have caused some significant issues in the past. And as I said, with the significant increase in the value of cattle, the amount of money turning over at cattle sales has also increased, bringing higher risk in cases where cattle leave a mart unpaid for as well. So most livestock marts across the country are now taking action, we reported this week, to minimise their exposure to that risk of potentially unpaid debts. And earlier this week, Arrivo Marts circulated a message to its customers informing them that new rules will apply to livestock purchases at all of its marts from Tuesday of this week. And the message said that all buyers must contact their local mart manager in advance to arrange a new trading agreement. And staying with marts, Charles, Agriland also reported this week that a second livestock mart is to start offering a sale service for cattle herds that have been restricted as a result of an outbreak of TB. So GVM Carrigallen Mart in County Leitrim confirmed to Agriland that it hopes to run the first sale of cattle from TB restricted herds on Monday, August 11th. Now, it's envisaged that farmers would be able to bid either online or ringside, but only CFU registered herds would be eligible to purchase cattle in these sales, and the cattle in the TB restricted herds will not be present at the mart. That's important to note as well. So, and these sales will take place after the mart's regular sales on Monday nights and Saturday as well. And last month we did report that Kings Court Mart in Cavan, in association with Mart.ie, rolled out the first of its kind service for farmers with herds that are restricted as a result of a TB outbreak. And we reported that the first sale from restricted herds took place at the Mart on Thursday, July 10th, and it saw 8 Hereford bulls averaging over 500 kg make €4.05 a kg of a price there as well. So it's, I suppose, part of maybe perhaps the wider proposals are around TB as well, offering that outlet to farmers that are restricted as a result of a TB outbreak. And no doubt, I'd say we might see more marts adding to that as well.
We'll move on now and return to one of the main ongoing issues in the general news cycle, which is Donald Trump and his threat of tariffs. Aisling, we saw, I suppose, an unwelcome development last weekend, albeit with the caveat that we don't really know what Trump is going to do. But what's the latest?
That's always the caveat around this topic, isn't it, Charles? It really is. So as we're recording currently at the moment, this is where things stand. So last week on Tuesday, the 8th of July, Donald Trump signed an executive order extending the deadline for the imposition of those reciprocal tariffs on a range of trading partners, including the EU, until August 1st. And as we know, a baseline tariff of 10% is currently in place on EU imports to the US. But then the latest twist in the ongoing saga over tariffs came last Saturday, Charles, when Donald Trump announced 30% tariffs on all EU products exported to the US starting on August 1st. And in a social media post, he said that he had sent a letter outlining this threat to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. And in that letter, he said that we've had years to discuss our trading relationship with the European Union and have concluded that we must move away from these long-term, large and persistent trade deficits. And he said, starting on August 1st, we'll charge the European Union a tariff of only 30% on EU products sent into the United States, separate from all sectoral tariffs. And he said, please understand that the 30% number is far less than what is needed to eliminate the trade deficit disparity we have with the EU. So, of course, the European Commission very disappointed by this move because the negotiations ongoing ahead of this August 1st deadline. And the European Commissioner for Trade, Maros Sefcovic, said that the European Union was disappointed. And he said that basically having a 30% tariff rate would be prohibitive to mutual trade. And he said that the European Union has approached the talks in good faith and with full intensity throughout. And they remain convinced that the transatlantic relationship deserved a negotiated solution and one that builds the basis for a new stability and cooperation. And he said that's why they will continue to engage with the US administration and prioritise a negotiated solution before that deadline of August 1st. And he said he can't imagine walking away without genuine effort from these talks. But he said, against the backdrop of all of that, the current uncertainty caused by what he described as unjustified tariffs cannot persist indefinitely. And he said we must prepare for all outcomes, including, if considered, well-considered proportionate countermeasures to restore the balance in our transatlantic relationship. And he met up with his US counterparts this week. And he also said as part of the EU approach to all of this, they're going to be doubling down on their efforts to open new markets as well. Here at home, the Taoiseach Micheál Martin said he hopes that negotiations with the US would continue. And he said that the EU and the US enjoy the biggest trade and investment relationship in the world. And he said when issues arise between us, they should be resolved by close and respectful dialogue. And he said while it's clear that all options remain on the table, the EU has also been clear that the preference is for a negotiated solution that avoids escalation as well. And the Irish Whisky Association has welcomed that continued engagement between the Irish government, the European Commission and the US in these trade talks. And they said that now is the time for engagement, not escalation. And they said that an additional 30% tariff would cause further damage to Irish whisky producers who are already suffering real economic pain as a result of that 10% baseline tariff as well. So as you said, Charles, the ground constantly shifting in that, and who knows where it'll go from here, but the deadline currently August 1st as things stand at the moment.
Back at home now, and farmers in the Agri-Climate Rural Environment Scheme, ACRES, who may be making non-productive investments, now have some long-awaited certainty, Aisling.
Yes, Charles. So the NPIs, which are the non-productive investments, they're complementary actions that are available to farmers under the Acres Cooperation approach to the scheme. And farmers are supported to take a tailored approach to benefiting nature on their farms. Now, Minister Martin Hayden confirmed this week that a claims system for payments for NPIs would open on Thursday of this week. And he said that they can submit in respect of actions undertaken in both 2023 and 2024. And farmers can lodge their own claims or engage an advisor to do so. And almost 4,300 applicants received approval for actions in 2023. And the number actually increased to 4,800 last year. And a third application window will open for NPIs later this quarter as well. So the most popular actions we learned are the installation of gates to prevent over and under grazing, the provision of boxes to provide nesting site for threatened species like barn owls or kestrels, the installation of water troughs to protect water courses as well is also a very popular action, NPI action. A total of over 76,000 actions were approved since 2023, and almost 42,000 of those were approved last year. And the department has said previously that completing approved NPIs allows a farmer to add to their acres payment by up to a maximum of €17,500 over the 5-year period of their contract. So it is worth quite a considerable amount of money, Charles, to farmers, but equally, farmers would be critical and say that they're waiting a very long time for this payment system to be put in place. So the closing date for the submission of claims is noted on the decision letters for this respective year of application. So farmers can check those letters or their advisors to see what the closing date is for the submission of claims. And we're being told that the payment for submitted claims will start to issue by October at the latest. So early October is the deadline we're getting from the department currently on the payment for those NPIs as well. And an explanation manual for lodging NPI claims is available on the department website as well if farmers and advisors want to check that out as well, Charles.
Finally this week, our listeners will of course be aware that ragwort as a noxious weed must be controlled by farmers when it's growing on their land. So having ragwort growing literally in the centre of our government is not a great look, Aisling, is it?
Yes, Charles, that's correct, because on Tuesday, Independent Senator Aubrey McCarthy drew our attention to the fact that ragwort is actually growing in front of Leinster House, which he's described as a shameful symbol of non-compliance. And he said if ragwort can flourish outside the very building where laws are made, it undermines our credibility and duty to uphold them. And he said we must act now. This is no longer a rural issue, it's a national embarrassment. And Senator McCarthy said that ragwort's bright yellow flowers may appear benign, but beneath its sunny facade lies a grave risk to Ireland's agricultural heritage and public health. And he noted, as you said, that ragwort contains toxic elements that can fatally damage the livers of horses and cattle, and landowners face fines of up to €1,000 for failing to control its spread. And he said that the plant's presence on motorways, farmland, urban estates, and now on the grounds of Leinster House demands immediate enforcement and public awareness. So there you go, ragwort on the grounds of Leinster House.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Just before we go, we just want to draw your attention to our coverage of the Irish Holstein Friesian Association Open Day, which took place in County Monaghan. And if you want to get a taste of all the action from the Greenlee herd that hosted the Open Day, you can check out our coverage from our dairy specialist, Hugh Harney. And speaking of Hugh, he is fronting Season 2 of Agriland's popular Dairy Trail podcast, the first episode of which you can now hear on Agriland.ie and the Agriland app. And finally, Agriland has launched a new farm safety campaign in conjunction with the Department of Agriculture and AXA. The first video and article featuring Minister of State for Farm Safety Michael Healy-Rae is now available on Agriland.ie and the Agriland app. The Farm Safe, Farm Well campaign will continue over the coming months, so stay tuned for that. But that's where we'll leave it. Please don't forget to rate, review and follow The Farming Week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love if you could spare some time to give us 5 stars and share The Farming Week with anyone you think might be interested. From Aisling and myself, take care and all the best.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.